10. Detailed justification here, and then if it's a promotion, they would be required to put in some additional information like the job code and things. This is one enhancement that Chris put in just in the last 24 hours. As we talked about it, is we do want managers to default to the SoaR guidelines. But a question I would have is, are managers familiar with this term SoaR guidance? I'm not thinking so. I'm saying Piotr.
No, I don't think so.
So I think we're going to change this to just default adjustment guidance or default salary adjustment guidance. And as you can see, it's on. And so if an employee were to, if a manager were to put in an employee name and they want a salary change as an example, they would say this is my number one, really important type. And then that's all that I need to put in as a manager, because you can see the asterisks here. But if you take this off, then you also need to put in a proposed new salary or the OTE increase. If there's a sales change, you can put it in here. But if you leave this on, then you don't need to put anything else. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, submit the recommendation, and then that sends it in that now business partners can review within this dashboard. So, and since that's not a real employee and everything else, it's not going to link to all of the data, and so it's not going to actually feed in real time to this, but when they put in real employees, they will.
Yeah, and I'll just add real quick that we'll set a scheduled refresh of every 5 minutes, so it should come through after that 5-minute time.
It's awesome.
From the app to
right.
Or the analytics.
One of the go ahead, Piotr.
Yeah, quick question. Because like submitting salary increase without peer calibration, looking at comparison is kind of the, So can we at least have like comment or guidance here that before deciding salary increase, please consider your internal peer equity, look at employee comparison, like something like that, so it's not just become, okay, I submit 20%.
Right. Well, I mean, we could put a note in here about it. I mean, obviously, we did want to know all nominations subject to affordability and approval. And I think the guidance is as business partners send this out to their managers or as they have their staff meetings, they want to know, like, yeah, if you put in 40%, that's not going to happen, right? Like, let's be realistic. And ideally, we say just default to the guidance here if you're not sure, because that's going to be SoaR guidance. And then obviously HR business partners are going to have the ability to review that and see it. Some managers are going to be more thoughtful than others, but ultimately this is just a collection template that's not. The other thing I'll note here, I won't note it unless HR business partners ask, but this isn't linked to any, because of security stuff. We didn't want to try to set up each single individual manager for what security they have access for. It was not reasonable to kind of accomplish. So you could put in any random ID here and any name. If they miss it by 1 digit here, but they have the name, and we, on the back end, we'll do validations to make sure, like, wait, that's not pulling through all the details because the number's off. Oh, this is Jane Doe. If they missed a 1 instead of a 2, we can update that on the back end and fix it for them. But once again, since it's not linked to anything, they could put in like Joe Schmo, and it's just gonna not do anything if they put in an ID that doesn't match and something that we can't match back to the name. We will know who submitted it, so if we want to go back and check, we can. We're hoping that for the most part, it's clean. Yes, so answer a few questions. He says you can kind of put them in. It's not going to be locked out at any time, and I'll show you the way that I would look at this from an HR business partner perspective in terms of that not being locked out. Managers can't edit or amend this, so once they put it in here, it's in, but they can make changes, obviously, during the review process with HR business partners. If they put in a second, so let's say they put in one for an employee and they put in another, it won't allow to. Chris, do you want to walk through how that deals with duplicate entries?
Yeah, I've tested it and it works, so it won't allow the same ID to go in. And there's also some validation on that field, the employee ID field, that will require 8 digits to go in there and comment on leading zeros if it thinks that that's the cause of not having 8 digits. So that's some some helpful like validation on that field, and there's some other validations in terms of the format on the local currency field and the percent increase field, and also an example provided to kind of guide them, like this is what the percent increase should look like. It should have a percentage sign, that sort of thing.
So there's some guidance there, and if there's two, I just tried submitting the same one, but if there is two of the same ID, it's going to not allow both of them.
Yeah, and then one other comment on the submissions. We do have a field that tracks who submitted it and the time that they submitted it. So that's in the analytics and is exportable to the Excel file. So
yeah. So Issa,
at no point do we not know who submitted it.
Right. And so your next question: could non-managers or non-HR submit? Yes. Anybody that has this link can submit. But since we do know who submitted, it's going to be really easy for HR business partners to go in and see, like, wait, who's random dude here submitting stuff, and okay, I'm automatically not supporting that one because it's not one of the leaders that we've allowed to do that. So
yeah. So on the security side, like a manager, once they submit, like it's going to run a process that basically would not allow them to view the submission other than their own, I believe, in the app. Not that they should be in the app anyways. And then it'll apply security based on the HR business partner assigned to that L2. So that's for like how the security goes.
Awesome. I'll go back to this. Once again, we'll change the title, but I think this is one of the biggest improvements, because rather than having managers just guess what's right, in the old comp checkpoint template, it would kind of give the guidance and they could do it. Here, they can just leave that on, and then they can feel really good about, like, just let it submit and let it roll through. And hopefully that's what happens in the majority. But if they do want to override it, they can, and then it's subject to HR review and leadership review.
Okay. Hey, Chopper, can you go back on that? This is a tangential question. So I see the link to the Comp29 report there at the top.
Mm-hmm.
How much work does it take to add things to that report when it comes out of Workday? Can that be edited? I know that Dylan can add certain macros in these reports, and so can we update that Comp29 report to become part of the modeling tool?
Probably, but I'm really hesitant to say that in time for this. But
Certainly.
So I think what you're saying is, like, in the Comp29, could we put SoaR guidance in there as an example?
And calculations, right? So if they're doing, they can get their US dollar RCAL amount in there.
Right. I think it does have
you can enable a code, like a macro, in that export. I think as long as it's probably not too big, maybe, because otherwise it comes out as a CSV file. So that might be like a limitation. But I know, like in the old days at HPE, we like encoded some more complex VBA to modify that.
Anyway, switch over that. I thought of it.
No, that's a good point, because if you could change, maybe it's not a Comp29 anymore, but if you could have a report that pulls up the organization and then gives them the ability to say, like, what if I did a 10% increase, and then at the top it would tell you. I mean, that might be a good addition. So okay, yep, noted. We'll see what we can get done for this one. But okay, so now that I have done all of that, what I've done, I've already filtered this. So what I've done is I've filtered by our fictitious manager. All this data is fake anyway. It does have real organizational hierarchy, but there's no employee IDs or information in here that links to anybody, which is why Chris doesn't want to load the new stuff until after we do training. But I've taken this fictitious manager, Lewis Jensen, and now I can see all of the nominations for his group. I can see by job, family, by L1, L4, etc. As an HR business partner, you can view everything here. It's got flags that are typical flags that we've heard HR business partners use, like, hey, we're doing an increase, but the comp ratio is still below 80 as an example. You can see a number of issues there. Or they're going to be over 110% with this change, and that's a salary change. Is that really the right thing to do? Or recommendations above SoaR guidance, which means that the manager submitted something, one was 40% increase or something, and it flags it here so you can see it. You can export this data, and I'll just do it real quick to show you. But this, and then there's an offline form that we have given to HR, and it's going to pop up here. So I would just grab this data, and there's instructions in this other form, but you put it in A6, run the macro, it formats everything nicely for their review with their leadership. We can also split these. There's been a desire to split these perhaps in some organizations, and we can, if we need to, have BCMs help do that split by different leadership. But the idea with this is if you override the percentage increase or the salary, etc., it will update everything. So in these cases, you know, you've got a proposed increase of 10%. I was going to go back to see default SoaR guidance. So this is where you can see defaults would be, sorry Chris, I haven't tested this with the new thing, but
yeah, well, so those were loaded prior to existence, so I think that's why they're empty, but normally it would show either true or false, depending on what was selected in the original submission. If it is loaded on the back end, like a pay equity action, it'll just be loaded as false, right? Because we're loading the actual increase.
right.
So that should always have a value in there.
True.
Getting
Checkbox there. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great. Any change you make, so if I say, well, look, there's a 10% adjustment here, we can only afford an 8% adjustment, or you know, it's a 4%, we need to do 6%. You know, any change here you can put in, and then if they put not supported, it's going to take that out of the ultimate cost here, so you can see what the cost would have been here, and then you can see what your new cost model is. So as they need to make adjustments to fit within, you know, some type of framework, they can. Obviously, they can sort by grad program, and then say, okay, we've got 3 grads. We're going to support this one. We're going to not support that one. Anyway, they can work through this modeling template, make adjustments to it if they want. Let's say instead of 10%, we're going to do 8%. We get our adjustments there. And then the idea with this is whether you have managers do it or whether HR business partners are going through it, they then have a file with all the supported and not supported, and they would then take it back to this app right here, and then essentially do the same thing here. So you can filter by your, you know, leadership, get down to the level that you want to support or the level you are supporting, and then go through this document, and on the HRVP review, hit the edit, and then you can go through and just mimic what was done in the spreadsheet. Once again, for smaller orgs, you can really come and do it right in here. If you've got like 10, it's probably easiest to just say, well, let's go in and review it here. But if you want to do the offline, you can. You support it, not support. The ones that are pending still haven't been reviewed. And then once I've done this, I'm doing it as an HRVP. Once you lock it again, it's going to say that I'm the one that made the change. The nice thing about this is you know, you might have an HR business partner that supports your L3s or your L4s or whatever the case may be, and then it rolls up to the L1 HR business partner, and they can see, okay, this has already been reviewed by this person on my team, and it's rolled up, and now I can see the cost. Once this comes through, and within that 5-minute refresh, like we mentioned, you can come in and look for by status. It's not updating here. Look at why, but anyway, you should be able to look at status and see supported, and then get the new cost and be able to review all the metrics based on which ones are supported and not supported within this app.
It probably there wasn't a status other than pending, I would guess, originally.
Yeah, we'll look at it. I had made some changes earlier to try to, like I've got on Boost.
Yeah, it's working. There's no refresh right now, so.
Oh,
yeah.
got it. Okay, that's why.
Yeah, but I can. Yeah.
We'll refresh it. So anyway, we'll talk about that. So I'm gonna show that in the demo next week about how you can go back and check the ones that are supported versus not supported. Right now, it's just showing pending. So those are the tools, and that's the process. Questions?
think looks good. Looks great. First of all, so I know it's a lot of work. So thank you guys for making that happen. One issue which I see potentially, and I know will be an issue for HRBPs, is lack of the mass load ability, like multiple transactions. We talk about that wrapper. I know, we thought Chris may be our solution for that, but can we at least come with a process? Okay, I don't know, have a template for them to kind of depopulate, which they send to BCM, and I don't know, just a solution for mass loading the transactions, because it will be a pain.
Yeah, Chris, do you want to answer like on the mass load opportunity, and then I've certainly got a comment that I would add.
I mean, the intent of it is, I think, to drive towards the individual managers to submit their entries. I mean, we're doing mass loads in the back end, and it can be done, through me. I can mass load, but it's kind of like, I guess, against the philosophy of the process, I would say.
I think. So I think what we're saying is there is a workaround. We can do mass loads, but when I think about the process of a mass load, what's going to happen is the HR business partners need to gather the information offline. They need to then prioritize it offline. They need to go through their leadership reviews offline, and then they need to provide the mass load, and then we can affect that mass load. So, and really that's the process that existed before. And our charter with this was really, how do we get HR business partners out of this? How do we get this down to a level where managers can submit it? And so what I would argue on this, and it's going to be a management of change, is that they're still looking at it through the lens of the way we did it before, and we need a way to mass load it. When I would say, why do we need to mass load if we can send, even if you've got L6 managers doing nominations here, great, send them this. And I know they're concerned because they're saying, well, if an L6 manager submits something, that needs to be approved by the L5, that yes, that's important. Then it needs to be approved by the L4, or whatever, an L3, and it needs to go through that process of approvals. Whereas I would argue the conversation should happen in whatever level staff to say, hey, if you've got important changes that need to happen, talk to me about it, let me know that you're going to submit it, and then submit it through this form, because that's going to then lead directly into here. And then when there's L2 and L3 level reviews, they're using this as a basis for the entry, and they're using this this tool here, this offline tool, if they want to review it and view it through the organization. Most organizations, I mean, especially given the cost constraints right now, I would not expect they're going to have massive submissions. I think we need to shift the thinking on this to sending everything and reviewing it on spreadsheets every step of the way, to saying, have a conversation, and if some L6 manager is submitting 10 nominations at 40% increases, then somebody needs to have a conversation with that L6 manager to be like, stop being ridiculous. We went through the conversation on what types of transactions we want. We're really limited. We're only looking at inline promotions or people that are really low in their comp ratio, whatever it may be, and then let the process work. So that would be my argument to change the thinking.
Well, yeah, and I'll add to that too. I mean, I think at HP there's a bias or a culture of that a tool needs to exist for every step of the way, and everything needs to be in the written word. And I don't think that always produces the best outcome. So I think having HRBPs doing some of that thoughtful reach out initially and communicating the limits of the checkpoint and maybe selecting only those groups that really should be submitting is gonna alleviate some of the work, both in terms of what managers have to sift through this some spreadsheet, and also what the HR business partner is going to have to sift through on the analytics side. So if they approach it in a thoughtful way, reach out and communicate well, I think that helps alleviate that problem. And,
I mean, I agree. I agree with what you guys are saying, but at the same time, I think we are a big organization. There is no situation that one size fits all, and I see organizations which this will work perfectly, and I see organizations which will have issue with the process. And I think the same kind of the feedback I was reading from you, Jeremy, and
I feel like too, like no one is stopping an HR business partner from creating their own spreadsheet or like reaching out or doing it the way that they want to do it within the process we've designed. Because every situation is unique, that they should feel free to do that, right? Like I feel like, and if it's necessary for their specific situation, well, then I think that should be encouraged. But it shouldn't alter the process for all just because of a few unique cases.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. If we can have, like, I don't know, a template for them to.
Well, and I think the template, if they want to do it that way, is let's just use the old manager nomination template. If that's what they want to use, I think they're going to miss out on a lot of the improvements by not kind of opening their mind to like, why do I need the control of this in a spreadsheet if we can review it on the back end and I can just have managers input? Like, why do I as an HR business partner want to take on the task of entering and reviewing 40 different things?
I got to answer that. So I want to go back to we can't when we say management of change, it's really important because I think you're right. What's happening is that we've set some expectation over the years that this is the way it's going to be done. And so it's really important to make, because those HR business partners are not going to be able to say, hey, we're going to do a different way now. You're going to take on a lot more work.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Let me put it in.
Let's say, hey, manager, it's your responsibility. Stop.
Exactly. And HR needs to stop taking the work on themselves.
Agreed.
Let me change the framework here, because another discussion we had early on was like, do we just open Workday to allow this process, just like we do in ARC? And initially it's like, well, that's fantastic because then every manager can go in and do it. Now, one, it's going to spin up, unmet demand, which is fine. This form has the same potential if we use it in the wrong way. But the other issue with that, and it comes right back to this, is if we did that, I think HR business partners would be celebrating because they'd be like, see, now we're letting managers do it. But what is HR doing? They're having to review everything on the back end because you don't have a budget for it. So they're having to go through and review everything on the back end. So it's really this same process. In fact, I think we've made it better because if every manager in the company got a link to Workday, they're going to think they have the ability to do 2 or 3 actions on their team, and it's going to be huge. So this, because we're saying anybody can submit to that form, but it's like by invite only because you have to send it to them. So I think this is like essentially opening up a Workday process, but it's better because we're limiting it in some way. But HR is just not comfortable because they're like, well, I want to see it before it gets in the tool. What they have to realize is even this, that isn't final. That's not final. So this is still review. This is still very much in the review process. I just think that's where they need to shift their thinking, because I think in the past it's like, if it's in this tool or it's in the analytics, it means it's already been reviewed by me, by my L2, by my L3, whatever the case may be. That shouldn't be the case. It should be in this tool before you take that review with your L2 and L3.
And I think they should, like, I think it'll benefit HR business partners if they approach it in a very rigorous way with like a tight timeline to give managers until this date to submit. If they don't meet that, then they don't submit. And then the second point is to put their hat on of like strategic advisor. So once they have the submissions, to do that analytical work of like, hey, these ones don't make sense, these ones do. We shouldn't do all 10 of these for this manager group. And really like put their strategic hat on, and that's where they're going to add value to the process.
Yeah, and let me just add it up because I know we're at the top of the hour, and I've got a call with Jeremy and Piotr right following this, so I'm happy to stay on and continue on this line, and I think there's value if there's questions. But those of you that aren't part of the process, if you want to jump, those of you that's really late, feel free to jump and don't feel like you need to be here. But I do want to answer questions because you guys are going to be supporting this, and I want to make sure that we're all comfortable with it. So, but to that, once again, kind of, I guess, closing the loop on that one, we can do things back end, but I think if a lot of HR business partners start moving to that, it's like, why did you ask us to get you out of it if you don't want to be out of it? There is no process in any world where there isn't a review at some point by leadership. HR business partners are just used to doing it before they submit to some tool, and what we're asking them is allow the submissions to come through the tool and then do the review. And by doing that, you take yourself out of collecting and coordinating. Isa had asked a question earlier, like, well, if this is open all the time, what happens if someone submits it later? To Chris's point, you give them a deadline, you say, look, it's open on the 28th, have everything in by the 7th of September. I mean, that's really still an early timeline. And then they can go through and start doing it, because in the form, or in this app here, you're gonna see, I believe, who submitted it. I think you can see who and when it was submitted. Maybe I'm wrong, Chris. I thought
it's in the analytics, so it'll be in the analytics and in the Excel file. The app is meant strictly for just applying those approvals and whatever adjustments have been.
Okay. But what we can see it, and once again, if the HR business partner sets up their review with their leadership on, let's say, September 13th, Wednesday the 13th, I mean, that's still early. We're giving people till the end of September, but they can set their reviews whenever they want. And if they've asked all managers to submit, they know they're going to review that on the 13th. That's when they sit down and they go through, probably the offline version, or they've split it and they've had the L3s go through the offline version and review it and make their, recommendations. Hold on, I'm losing all the stuff here. And then they go through and they either support, not support. And once they do that, anything that comes in is pending within this form, they're going to know was submitted after the deadline. They can go in right away and just not support it, or however they want to deal with those late comers, if you will.
And the more they're gearing managers towards the SoaR guidance, the easier it's going to be on themselves, and the more appropriate the adjustment will be, because we have those guidelines set, for strategic reasons. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like this. A nice enhancement for sure.
Hey Trevor, just another suggestion here. So for the management of change for those managers, we pull in Matta's team for that. I think they would be very interested in giving. Because I feel like these HR business partners need air cover, and it would be Martine that would be the one that gives them that air cover, right? It says my HR team is not going to be busy doing whatever these managers are expecting them to do, right? Like that needs to come from Martine and says, this is the process that managers are expected to do.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we have had, so Valentina's been working, Chris has built like a deck to kind of go through some of this process, and then there's a people partner pack, and part of that is a couple slides that they're intending to take to their leadership staff meetings, and Valentina has been kind of reviewing that, helping with it. I guess to your point, like on what level of leadership that comes from, I'm not sure, I'm not convinced, but I don't think we're going to get pushback on managers at having the ability to enter. I do think potentially one concern is like, hey, I'm an L3 and I'm used to submitting for all of my org. Now I got to go through one by one on this form and submit. No, you don't. If you've got L4 leaders that you need to submit some, send them the link and tell them to do it, right? Once again, it should be, have you had a conversation with me, and am I supportive of it? Then go ahead and put it in the app. And then if somebody's going rogue and saying, I get this, now I can do it. It's like, nobody's gonna hide from this process. People that are trying to sneak through things, nothing's gonna sneak through. So I think we just need to not worry.
But I guess what I'm worried for, and I'll name a name. It's like Laura Fawcett in customer support is supporting Ramesh Giri. Ramesh is going to run her over. He's going to say, no, you're going to put all this stuff together on a spreadsheet, and you're going to do it. It's like that's the process he's going to expect. And if she doesn't deliver that, he's going to be unsatisfied with her performance. And it's kind of like she needs to have, like, no, Ramesh, like, this is the process. It's out of my hands. Like you're going to.
Okay, but how would she get that information for the spreadsheet before? She'd have to go out to each individual manager.
She's going to have to go back to the original process that requires that